Welcome to episode 416 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger at sellingyourScreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing filmmaker Michael Matteo Rossi. He's a real independent writer, director, producer. He's been putting projects together for a while now and comes on today to talk about his new film, The Handler. It's a super contained action thriller that he shot during COVID. It's another inspiring story for someone who's just out there making things happen. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 416. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. Quick few words about what I've been working on. So we're finally getting ready for the release of The Rideshare Killer. We've got all of our deliverables together and we're just trying to figure out the exact release schedule now. So I should have an update on that real soon. I've been having some of my early podcast episodes chopped up into 30-second clips and posting them on TikTok and all the other places where you post these sort of short clips. I think YouTube Shorts, Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels. I'm not really getting much traction yet with these. So if you have a TikTok account or you use TikTok, please do look me up and give some of my videos likes under my name, just Ashley Scott Meyers. I'll also put a link from my website. So if you go to sellingyourscreenplay.com, in the upper right-hand corner, I have all the links to the Facebook and I've put one there for TikTok as well. Also, we have officially launched SYS's six-figure film festival and screenplay contest for 2022. So if you have a low-budget screenplay producible for less than $1 million US, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. And if you have a low-budget film produced for less than $1 million, we're taking submissions on that through Film Freeway. Please do tell all your filmmaker friends about the contest. I'm really going to try and make this contest great for the filmmaking community, everyone that's involved. And I'm going to try and bring as much value as possible to the filmmaking community. And I'm totally open to suggestions too. So if you're someone who's been to a lot of film festivals or someone who's entered a lot of screenplay contests and have some suggestions on what makes these festivals and contests valuable for the people who enter them, please do email me. You can always get in touch, info@sellingyourscreenplay.com. And those types of emails are always very much appreciated. So those are some of the things that I have been working on over the last couple of weeks. Now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing filmmaker Michael Matteo Rossi. Here is the interview. Welcome, Michael, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Ashley. I appreciate it.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Sure, yeah. Well, I was LA born and raised, actually. So kind of lived here my whole life. Went to San Diego State for college. Then when I graduated, pretty much came right back to LA just to kind of continue pursuing my my career as a screenwriter, director, producer. So I had made some short films in college, and then that kind of gave me the leg up to, once I graduated, try to get into kind of doing my first indie feature, and kind of never looked back from then.
Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about that a little bit, your first indie feature, just real quick. Maybe you can kind of tell us how you got that off the ground. How did you raise money? How did you get the script polished up? Sort of just maybe the 2-minute overview of that one.
Sure. So I had gone through about 6 months of kind of development hell, so to speak, before. That was very stressful, close calls, the whole bit. And then I kind of took a step back and I said, you know what? Let me think of another script that I wrote that's a little bit more contained, that can be done on a lesser budget, And I kind of had something where it was basically 2 main locations, less than 10 main characters. And I had some money saved up a little bit. And I kind of used that as the first kind of money in fund type thing. And then I was able to kind of get a couple other people interested and excited about it, and basically made it for super ultra low budget, but we got it done. It got distributed, and that was just something that, again, gave me that leg up to kind of make my next feature and all of that type of stuff.
So you mentioned like you had a couple of close calls. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit, because I always find with people in the entertainment industry, people that are outside, they don't realize how many close calls often happen, and it doesn't quite get over the hump. And I was in a similar, when you and I met on The Pinch, I was in a similar situation where I had a couple of scripts that almost made it, into production. I said, I'm just going to go do myself. What were you doing before you did this first feature? Were you writing scripts and sending them out sort of the traditional writer route where you're trying to get an agent and a manager and get them into studios? What was sort of your approach before you did this first independent film?
Yes. So basically, I tried to tackle it from all sides and all avenues that I knew. I did try to do the whole, okay, let me see if I can kind of send inquiry letters to lit agents, managers, what have you, then maybe try to shop my script around. That can be obviously something difficult, especially when, you're a filmmaker or writer that hasn't had any other features produced or feature scripts produced. So that was a tricky one. And then it's, using 6 degrees of separation. Who do you know? What favors can you ask? What type of things like that? So I kind of took it from all different avenues. And then, it's the cliche, but invest in yourself sometimes. And, whether you're an actor, writer, what have you, we all technically spend time and money to better ourselves and our career. So I did have a little bit of money saved up. I knew that I had to basically fund, at least a portion of the film to at least get the couple people else that I knew might invest interested, because I was saying, look, I'm going all in too, so it's one of those things. Getting the first fund is usually the most difficult. So I took that kind of a little bit more unorthodox route, the kind of do-it-yourself route. But thankfully, it paid off. I got a distribution deal, the whole bit. But, Ashley, as you know, so much of it starts with yourself. I mean, if you're not going to promote, if you're not going to put yourself out there, if you're not going to, go out there and pitch your script or sell it up or something like that, then what's the incentive for other people to first kind of bankroll you or bet on you? So that I think was very helpful. It really starts with you, seeing what you can do, digging deep, see what kind of connections you have, and just be hungry for it.
Yeah, sound advice for sure. I'm curious. So when you had a little bit of seed money, you kind of got the ball rolling. Who were the investors that you went out to? Were they friends and family? Were they colleagues of colleagues? And what was your actual pitch to them? A lot of these early films, are not necessarily going to make their money back in like a pure ROI sense. So what is your pitch in that situation? I've seen so many of those pitches. Oh, look at Blair Witch. Look at, Paranormal Activity. It was $30,000. It made $100 million. We see those sort of astronomical outliers, but that's not always necessarily the reality. What was your pitch to your investors?
So, yes, I mean, a lot of it were either people that I knew, friends, colleagues, even a little bit of family that understood. And look, I told it to them straight too. I said, look, whatever you put in, there's a chance that you might not see a penny back. And thankfully, they had a little bit of expendable income that they could kind of see it, they were interested in giving me that chance. They had also seen some of my previous short films. They had seen that I stayed pretty prolific and that I had done well on the festival circuit. So that, of course, was a leg up. And of course, the script itself, I mean, that's a selling point too. If they responded favorably to it, if they liked it, based on the log line, based on the synopsis, and then based on, of course, the actual script and them reading it, that was like, okay, you know what? Let's see this film out there. If the script is as good as what the potential film could be, let me give X amount of money. So I told it very straight. I think I was very transparent with them. And I think just being very honest with them, like you said, I wasn't going to give them that comparison. Oh, this is going to be the next Blair Witch. This is going to be the next whatever, you know, it's going to be made for 50 grand and we're going to make 50 million. I didn't insult any of their intelligence. I told them very straight, you know, here's what it is. Here's how it is. You're investing basically based on the script, on the content, and my ability to see films out and at least get them out there and complete them. And thankfully, for the first time, that was enough to do it.
Yeah. Perfect. That's sound advice as well. So you and I met on my film, The Pinch, a number of years ago. You helped out with some producing duties. And one thing that I was impressed with was your networking. I mean, I follow you on Facebook, or I'm friends with you on Facebook. And I think pretty much every single person from the cast and crew of The Pinch also follows you on Facebook. And I'm curious, what is your overall approach to social media? How does it help you? Why do you do it? And what are you trying to accomplish with all of these social media posts?
That's again, another good question. I think that as annoying as social media may be, as quote necessary and evil as it may be, it's essential nowadays. And it's strange because my bread and butter in terms of social media, ironically, is Twitter, which I know some people are not on Twitter. They don't know how to use it. It's confusing, all that. But my Twitter grew kind of exponentially just through me giving advice, certain things like that. It got retweeted a lot. This was around 16 when we were doing The Pinch, and it just kind of came from there. And I'm telling you, I've been able to reach out to kind of some talent directly based on that. I found an investor off of that I didn't even know was an investor at first. So if you are a screenwriter, if you are a producer, all that, I will say, as annoying as it may be, you have to be on social media. That is such an important way to network and to even be like, okay, look, hey, maybe I'm mutual friends with this person, but that person, it just creates this forum that if you know how to play it right, you can definitely use it to your advantage in terms of cultivating your script into a film, what have you. So I think it's extremely important. I really do.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dig into your latest film, The Handler. Maybe to start out, you can just give us a quick pitch or logline. What is this film all about?
Sure. So it follows Riker Dune, who's an ex-Marine, and he comes back short on money. He kind of falls into this kind of mob boss guy to do odd jobs, things like that. He realizes it's not turning out well, and he basically purposely screws up a job and basically finds shelter in this safe house where the mob boss basically intermittently sends all of these mercenaries out to kill him. And it's kind of what he does. It's my throwback to 80s, 90s action films where you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit and just enjoy the ride, the fights, the action, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. And so where did this idea come from? You mentioned the 80s and the 90s. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. What was sort of the genesis of this story?
So the interesting thing is that I had actually finished another script about a month before COVID happened in early 2020. And then COVID hit, kind of sidelined my ideas because it was a little bit more of a high concept. And a few months into COVID, I'm just like, look, I got to do something. I'm getting cabin fever. I need to stay productive, all of that. And I basically had access to this one big house location. And that gave me that creative juice to be like, let me see what I can do based on this kind of one big location, contained script. And that's where it kind of blossomed. And, you know, we didn't even have a full working script actually when we were doing it. We had more of a blueprint. It's pretty crazy. And then, it was an interesting approach, but I worked with a lot of actors that I'd worked with before that are great with improv, with everything like that. But I just tried to take advantage and make the best out of the situation that was there with so many things closed. And thankfully, I think it paid off.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, just how do you, because you mentioned action and the fighting, and
Yeah.
how do you handle that on a low budget? Just maybe give us just some sort of logistical pointers for shooting a low budget action film. I mean, you have gunplay in there. There's certainly a lot of hand to hand fighting, but maybe walk through that. Do you have a stunt coordinator? How much time do you spend choreographing these fights beforehand? How do you actually shoot these things on a low budget?
So for the whole month before we filmed, my lead actor, Chris Levine, great guy, worked with my stunt fight coordinator, Matt, and they worked every day on kind of perfecting his own craft of fighting because he fights a lot in the film.
Gotcha.
And we had a basic breakdown of, we went to location a bunch of times before, but so much of it, no joke, of the fine-tuning fight scenes were done the day of. Maybe an hour or two before we blocked it out. But you have to trust your talent and crew to make sure that they know what they're doing. And everybody showed up super professional. We're all about it. And then in terms of how to pull off, some of the action too, or the gun stuff, everything, I mixed practical with some VFX. For example, we had this one guy, this trained guy who, with a paintball gun would shoot out dust balls, which when they hit a surface, they look like bullets hitting the wall, which was cool. So you mix that with my great VFX artist, James Poirier, and he did the flashes, most of the flashes. He did some of the blood, everything like that. And then mixed with, of course, our on-set special effects makeup artist, Rafif, who was great. She did a lot of the cuts and the blood and the bruises. Mm-hmm. So it's just, actually, it's being resourceful. I mean, that's the thing. It's really working with people that you trust that believe in the film.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about your writing process a little bit. Where do you typically write, and when do you typically write? Are you write in the morning? Do you go to a coffee shop for that ambient noise? Do you have a home office? What does your writing schedule look like?
So I almost 100% write at home, actually. I write in my room. And I basically write in kind of short, controlled bursts, so to speak. I will sit down and just let it bleed onto the computer for a good 30 minutes to an hour, and then I got to take a walk. I got to take a little break, all that. I can't actually write for like 5 hours straight uninterrupted. It's just the process doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. So I usually don't listen to music or anything like that when I'm writing. I actually need like total focus and all that. I put my phone away. I put all the other distractions away, and I just focus on the writing. Mm-hmm. And I usually think it starts with the characters, and the characters can create the plot. So that's my approach. Again, I think that it varies from person to person, but that's the one that I feel the most comfortable with.
Sure. And how much time do you spend actually in Final Draft writing script pages versus how much time do you spend doing index cards and outlining and that sort of preparatory stuff?
So interestingly enough, I would actually say it's probably 80-20, 80% on Final Draft, 20% the kind of the index notes, all of that, which I know sounds pretty crazy, but I think about and I break down and I brainstorm so much so that it just kind of writes itself, so to speak, once I hit Final Draft. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting approach. I just make sure that I know and understand the characters really, really well, where they start, where they're going, and where they end up.
Gotcha. So as you were going through this script, let's talk a little bit about your development process. Once you have a draft, what do you do with it? Do you polish it up yourself? Do you have some trusted writer friends or producer friends, actor friends? Do you get notes from them? Just walk us through sort of your development process with the script, like The Handler.
So I knew that obviously the most important character was Riker. And I almost, as I was starting to write it, had actors in mind for each of the roles. I would send the script or the idea to a couple of actors that I really trust, that are good friends, that would tell it to me straight, give me their thoughts, everything. Once they seemed very receptive towards it, that only kind of confirmed how I felt as well, even more like, wow, I want to make it happen. So, it's usually just sending it to a few trusted people that I know would tell it to me straight.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are as receptive to it as how I feel about it, it's go time. It's off to the races. It's,
Mm-hmm.
me trying to, make it.
Yeah. And how do you go forward if maybe they don't respond quite the way you would want, or they offer a bunch of changes that maybe you don't necessarily agree with? How do you navigate those waters?
I am open-minded, and I appreciate constructive criticism. And if somebody has an idea that I don't take, I'll be very transparent, and I'll be honest. I'll say I appreciate that, but I think I'm feeling good about this. But I have pretty thick skin, so I don't get deterred about that. And on the flip side, if somebody makes a decent suggestion, or Mike, why don't you try this? I'm all for it. So I don't take any of it personally. I know that with the people that give me this advice, their best interest is to only make this story better.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all for it. I'm okay with it. Because I know not to reach out to the people that kind of quote don't know what they're talking about, or just gonna make the most ridiculous things. I reach out to people that are well versed in reading scripts, understanding character story arcs, all of that, and again, will be very honest with me.
Mm-hmm. How do you approach screenplay structure? And especially with something like this, where you have sort of an action movie that maybe even has certain genre requirements, like, an action scene every 10 minutes or something like that. But how do you just approach sort of the structure of something like this? There's sort of that Blake Snyder, Sid Field, your 3-act structure with all your act breaks and midpoint. What is your approach to this sort of stuff?
Yeah, no, I think that, like I said, it starts with the characters. I write a whole synopsis down at first, before I even get into the whole writing the script,
mm-hmm.
where, all right, here are the marks that I want to hit. I knew that this was going to be my most action-packed script that I had ever written. So I knew that, just like you said, to be honest, almost an action scene or an action thing every 5 pages, so to speak, or even more frequently. So I knew that needed to be sprinkled in, but I also knew for this one, I was going to go present and then flashback, and then present, flashback, to show how he got to the point that he went to. So it's kind of told in an interesting structure that way, but it's writing and having the whole kind of story idea from beginning to end at first, mm-hmm. and then just kind of going more into detail with the actual script once I know that.
Gotcha. Okay, so once you had a draft of the script that you like, it sounds like you sent it to a couple actors, you were getting a good response from them, so it becomes go time. How did you actually raise the money? What was sort of some of those steps to actually getting this thing from script to post-production?
I invested a lot of it myself, but from money that I had made on previous films that I had done. So I kind of recycled that, because between us, and then your viewers, this film was made on a lot less than they may think it was. Mm-hmm. So I was able to kind of be very smart with that, and also work with, keep in mind too, at that point, so many people were just hungry for work. They just wanted to be out there. We shot this in July of 2020. So it was a good opportunity for all of us to say, look, we'll do stuff including me, lower than what I may feel I should do, but we just want to create it and make good content. So I was able to kind of budget it with my other producer and then say, okay, this is totally feasible. Let's mm-hmm. make it happen. But I didn't reach out to some of my bigger primary investors, because I knew that I could pretty much do this myself. Gotcha. So I wanted to kind of do that. I know, again, there's no right way. Everybody wants mm-hmm. to know, how do you get the money for things and all mm-hmm. that. But thankfully, I was able to kind of handle most of it myself, actually.
Gotcha. So now, how did you get hooked up with Uncorked Entertainment? I had Keith on my podcast a couple of years ago, Keith Leopard over at Uncorked, and we get a lot of his movies coming across a podcast. But how did you ultimately get in touch with him and get signed on with him? It's
interesting, because Chris Levine, my lead actor, was actually in Cannes. He traveled to Cannes to kind of check out during the film festival, everything. And he actually met Keith and Michael there. They grabbed some beers, they got along, everything. And then Chris actually, because he believes in it a lot too, he showed Keith one of the fight scenes and said, look, got a film coming out, looking for distribution soon, all that. Mm-hmm. They really liked it. Then Chris linked me up with Keith and Michael, and we started talking. I felt really good about them. I'd only heard the best things from other filmmakers and people that had worked with him. So it just made the most sense. And again, we signed with them in August and it got released last week. Mm-hmm. That is very, very quick. So far, I'm very happy with them and everything. So, and credit to Chris for bridging that together, which was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So, what advice do you have? Just some general advice do you have for people that are trying to get into the industry, and especially geared towards screenwriters? What do you recommend? Do you recommend, as a producer yourself, do you recommend someone does producing of their own scripts? Do you recommend they find a producer? What is sort of your general advice when you get approached by a new screenwriter?
I think that, first of all, networking is key. Mm-hmm. Just surrounding yourself with a lot of good people or people mm-hmm. that are doing some stuff. I do feel, and I understand it's easier said than done, but depending on what it is, creating your own content really helps as well. If you have even a feature script, and seeing, okay, how could I make this feasible with basically myself, maybe a couple of other people, but I think it's putting yourself out there to networking. It's kind of checking and seeing who is looking for a script, who do I know? Is there a fellow colleague or actor that you feel like is interested in this? Mm-hmm. Help you produce. On the indie level, you have to wear so many different hats. So, even if you're writing it, you need to think of people that you may know that can help you make it happen. Mm-hmm. And that starts with networking, that starts reaching out. Just don't be afraid to reach out to people, to reach out to producers and things like that. The worst case they do is just ignore you or say no, and then mm-hmm. it's on to the next one. It's not a personal thing. Mm-hmm. So I think all of those things really will help.
Yeah, for sure. Sound advice. I always like to end the interviews just by asking the guest if there's anything they've seen recently that they thought was really great. Netflix, HBO, Hulu. Is there anything you've seen recently that maybe was a little under the radar that you could recommend to our listeners?
Oh man, that's a good question. God, I'll tell you something. I haven't watched that many recent movies, which I know is terrible. Like I rewatch a lot of things. I rewatch a lot of movies, and I was watching some action films, obviously, to prep for this. And I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of John Woo's films, like
sure.
Hard Boiled, Face mm-hmm. Off, The Killers. Like it's so well done. Obviously, rewatched Terminator 2 recently. Brilliant. I understand that's not an under the radar film, but all of these were so fun to watch. And then another. This film Lone Survivor. I don't know if you've heard of it. Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg. It's and just seeing, for me as somebody who's starting to get into more action thrillers, things like that, it's so interesting to see how these action pieces, these set pieces are shot, and it motivates me because some of them are brilliant. Mm-hmm. So it gives me a lot of ideas. I understand these films are older, but those are the ones that I had kind of rewatched recently and were like, wow, this was great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those are all good recommendations. So how can people see The Handler? What's the release schedule going to be like for it?
So it actually got released literally 1 week ago. It got released on the 7th, and it's on Amazon, it's on iTunes, it's on Google Play, it's on like YouTube for pay, it's on Vudu. I think DirecTV. So all of those, Amazon, obviously, probably the big one. So, all those, if you just even Google The Handler movie, it'll kind of show you some of the stuff it's on. And I think it's a fun ride. I think that if you take it for what it is, and, it's not pretentious, it's not trying to be anything that it isn't, you'll have a good time and you'll like some action, some fight scenes.
Yeah, perfect. And what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, a blog, anything you're comfortable sharing, I'll round up for the show notes.
Yeah, my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all of them, you can kind of search me, Michael Matteo Rossi, and it'll pop up. So those are the ones I usually post almost every day on them, or every other day. So those will be good.
Perfect. Well, Michael, congratulations getting this film done. It was good to talk with you today, and good luck with all your future films.
Thank you so much, Ashley. This was great. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye. I just want to talk quickly about SYS Select. It's a service for screenwriters to help them sell their screenplays and get writing assignments. The first part of the service is the SYS Select Screenplay database. Screenwriters upload their screenplays along with a logline, synopsis, and other pertinent information like budget and genre, and then producers search for and hopefully find screenplays they want to produce. Dozens of producers are in the system looking for screenplays right now. There have been a number of success stories come out of the service. You can find out about all the SYS Select successes by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. Also on SYS podcast episode 222, I talked with Steve Deering, who was the first official success story to come out of the SYS Select database. When you join SYS Select, you get access to the screenplay database along with all the other services that we're providing to SYS Select members. These services include the newsletter. This monthly newsletter goes out to a list of over 400 producers who are actively seeking writers and screenplays. Each SYS Select member can pitch one screenplay in this monthly newsletter. We also provide Screenwriting Leads. We have partnered with one of the premier paid Screenwriting Leads services, so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These leads run the gamut. There's producers looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. They're looking for shorts, features, TV, and web series pilots, all types of projects. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. Also, you get access to the SYS Select forum, where we will help you with your logline and query letter and answer any screenwriting related questions that you might have. We also have a number of screenwriting classes that are recorded and available in the SYS Select forum. These are all the classes that I've done over the years, so you'll have access to those whenever you want once you join. The classes cover every part of writing your screenplay, from concept to outlining to the first act, second act, third act, as well as other topics like writing short films and pitching your projects in person. Once again, if this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, please go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that is sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing author and screenwriting consultant Pilar Alessandra. She has her own podcast called On the Page, but she's also written a number of books, including The Coffee Break Screenwriter, where she's come up with a plan for busy people to write their screenplays in short 10-minute bursts, which I think is how a lot of busy people have to start their screenwriting careers, just fitting in their writing in between these moments. A lot of us are very busy with family, with jobs, and everything else. So I think she's got a really interesting approach for folks that are looking to write and looking to get into screenwriting, but don't have big chunks of time to devote to it. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's our show. Thank you for listening.